Hey everyone, today's talk is going to be on the Revolutionary War, or more specifically the causes that led up to the Revolutionary War. And we're going to talk about one moment in particular, the Boston Tea Party. Now, why was that significant? What were the causes that led up to it? And then finally, what was the outcome after the Boston Tea Party? First, let's get into some causes. Why were the colonists so upset? And the main reason? We have taxes. The British continually taxed the colonists. One such act was the Sugar Act, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a tax on sugar and other things like coffee. Another tax was the Stamp Act. Now this was a tax on newspapers, pamphlets, public and legal documents. Even small things like playing cards had tax on them. Next, the Townshend Act. Now this was a series of taxes on imported goods from the British. The colonists didn't so much have a problem with the taxes as they did not having a voice in Parliament, and the phrase "no taxation without representation" started becoming a catchphrase. The colonists wanted to be represented in Parliament so they had a voice on what things should or should not be taxed. And then finally, we get to the Tea Act. This raised prices for colonial merchants selling tea. Other reasons or other causes that led up to the Revolutionary War. So we have the colonists wanted to be respected. They want that respect from the British. And then finally, they started wanting their freedom from the British. And that leads us up to the Boston Tea Party. Now, there were 60 members of a group called the Sons of Liberty that took part in this. And the Sons of Liberty were organized by this man, Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams had a history of protesting some of those taxes that we talked about earlier. They dressed like Mohawk Indians and climbed onto about 3 different boats that the British had in Boston Harbor. Now, they did not damage anything on the boat. The only thing they did was dump 342 crates of tea into Boston Harbor. Now the story goes that they only wanted to protest the tea. They even took time to carefully take off the locks that were holding the tea in the cargo holds. They only wanted to protest the tea. Now this Boston Tea Party wasn't so innocent, and it offended the British, which led to something called the Intolerable Acts. Now these were a series of acts, and they were meant to punish the colonists. Things like closing Boston Harbor until that tea was paid for. Another act, the Quartering Act, allowed soldiers to stay in the homes of the colonists if there was no housing available for them. Now these intolerable acts led up to protests and anger on the part of the colonists, and we'll talk more about that in class and in future videos.